Oops. Good evening, guys. How is everybody today? Please let me know if you can hear me. I can't hear myself, so. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So yes, I do have some commands. I haven't put a list out. Just bear with me a little bit. Celia, darling, how are you? I see all kinds of people in this chat. Sorry, I'm dual screening a bit. Give me a second. Trying to get stuff sorted out here. Actually, you know what? I'm sure. So this is our first official stream. Yay! I don't have a EA command yet. Sorry. Also, I am going to give you guys a list of commands that you can use in the chat. Please do not abuse them. That's the first one. I will have a list up probably after stream this evening. I did not get around to that because I was eating food before I came to stream, so. There's a cooldown on that. Most of them have a cooldown of, well, like 5 minutes. Actually, correction, most of them have a cooldown of 10, but I can drop it to 5 if you want. Yes, Celia does. Actually, I think a couple of people do. The next command is hydrate if somebody wants to do that. There we go. Most of these, like I said, have a cooldown of 10 minutes. I will have a list up after stream. I have water. I have snacks. Somebody want to do the snack command? Okay, yeah, there's a like a 10-minute timer on a couple of those so that they do not get abused. So, I have a snack. I have Girl Scout cookies. You already saw the hug command. I know people that have girls in Girl Scouts, so I was able to get some. They actually delivered them to me at work, which was pretty awesome. So, snack, water. Um, oh, Celia, this one's for you. Nobody else do it, please. Celia, do me a story fact reading, please. What would you like to know about the story we're reading tonight? Okay, so the story that we're reading tonight is called Reflections of a Padawan. The main character is Callista. Um, she is my original character. And the other characters that come to mind are her master, Master Mark Faulkner. He was actually written in honor of a friend of mine that I've known for a really long time. And I found out that he actually passed away a few years ago, so kind of keeping the character in her original story kind of in his honor. The secret one. I'm not gonna give you spoilers. Celia already yelled at me for that one because I accidentally gave her someone one of the other stories. So there's quite a handful of characters in the story, and they'll get introduced. It's kind of a long list to be listing out here, but yes, no spoilers, please. Also, just a note, I do have a couple of other commands. One of them is translate. It won't apply so much in this particular series, but definitely in some of the later ones. You'll see it pop up because I do use some words that are not English. So, generally they would be Mandoa. So, if you hear a word that you don't know, just use the translate command and I'll try and translate for you. Any other questions before we get started? Yes, that one. Oh, come on. Very funny, Demon. Alright. Also, I am going to put a little disclaimer on this particular story. This is the story that I wrote when I was 17 or 18, so it's extremely cringe in my opinion, so just kind of bear with me on that. Okay. I'm just gonna do some split screening here. Just give me 1 second while I get stuff set up. Yes, yes, you are too cool. Alright. Where? Okay. So I'm not, I'm going to read my disclaimer this first go around, but it is set to go off in chat every 30 minutes when I'm live, so just be aware that that's a thing. It's not spam, it's just my bot doing what it's supposed to. Alright. Just making sure I'm all settled here. Sorry for the extra noise. Alright. Everybody ready? So this story is called Reflections of a Padawan. It is the first in the Healer quadrilogy. For those who don't know what quadrilogy means, it means a 4-part series. I needed a fancy word. Sorry. Alright. Also, please let me know if the music is too loud. I'm trying to keep it low so it's there but not drowning me out. Hey, Saraz. It's too early for that, Celia, and only mods can do that. It's a mod-only command for reasons. No, you're fine. I just didn't want people abusing it. Alright. It's too early, Sniper! Ah, yes. Yeah, I don't usually take my meds for another couple of hours, because I don't want to fall asleep in the middle of my evening. So, yeah, I generally don't take them till about 9:30 or 10. So. And, like I said earlier, I will be putting a list of commands up that everybody can use by the time the stream is done with. Actually, probably right after we're done. So. Alright. I'm gonna go ahead and read our disclaimer, just so everybody knows. All right. Star Wars and associated material contained within works produced or published by Lucasfilm Ltd., Disney, or its subsidiaries remains the sole property, copyright, and trademark of said entities. No profit is being made from this work. All characters in this work are original and remain the intellectual property of their originating writers. The Katani people and all related information are the brainchild of Stephen Card. All characters used are used with the permission of their originating writer. The Mandoa language is copyright Karen Travis and Lucasfilm Disney. In-text translations are provided when possible outside of contextual clues in the chapter. All right. Everybody ready? Have your snacks and your water. All right. That should be the sniper saying that, but sure, we'll go with that. Alrighty. Do you guys want me to say the chapter numbers? Because that might help a little bit. Okay. So obviously we're starting with chapter 1. Here we go. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. I might need to work on my volume a little bit. It may be picking up my mouse clicks, perhaps. It is rather close to where my mouse is, so it may be picking that up. Yes. Yeah, desk setup is a little bit weird right now, but we're rolling with it. Yeah, I that was because I just did something with my mic, so sorry about that. Alright. Okay. Chapter 1. 12-year-old Callista sat back on her heels. She couldn't remember a time without her master in her life. She had lived and studied with him for as long as she could remember. Jedi Master Mark Faulkner had lived on Corellia ever since he was knighted. His charge to serve as guardian of the system held for as long as he lived. He had found his student when she was but a baby. Someone had left her on his doorstep. He had found that she had taken to him immediately. Callista finished her morning meditations just as she felt her master call her through the bond that they shared. "Callista, it is time for your saber lessons." She replied in the same manner and rose from her place on the floor. Smoothing out her tunic, she retrieved her saber from its place under her pillow and clipped it to her belt. Like many of the sabers used by Padawans in the temple, she had built hers with the training setting as well as the normal setting. The saber was her most recent accomplishment. Building one with the dual modes had taken skill, but she had done an excellent job. Now began her formal training in the proper use of it. She stood next to her master on the training floor. She had shed her robe and stood in her tunic and pants, saber in her left hand. Calming herself, she turned and saluted her master with her saber. He bowed, and then they ignited their sabers. Today, she was learning basic blocks and parries from Form 1. When she was further in her training, she would choose a form to focus on. Breathing hard, she wiped the sweat from her brow after another round of saber drills. She was determined to learn everything she could, and it showed. Master Faulkner called an end to the session for the day and sent her off to shower and change. Relax. Contemplate what you have learned today, my Padawan. Tonight we go on patrol. The cool night air wafted through the streets of Coronet City. The two Jedi moved silently within the shadows. Jedi were scarce in the system, so the Master and Padawan tended to draw unwanted attention if they went out during the daylight hours. Callista sensed it at the same time that her master stopped short. I felt it, Master. Nodding to his Padawan, they both drew their sabers, holding the hilts ready. Peeking around the corner, Callista took stock of the situation. She saw no one but a tall man dressed in a dark cloak. It looked similar to the one that her master sometimes wore, but it was too dark to tell for sure. She reached out with her senses, but could feel nothing. Whoever it was either not a Jedi, or if he was, he had closed himself off. Turning around to speak to her master, she realized that he was no longer there. Stepping out into the alley, she called out, "State your business here, sir." Before she had even finished the sentence, the man ignited the almost pure white blade, a color she had never seen before. Her master always carried a green blade. She followed suit, her pale purple blade springing to life. She set herself in a defensive stance, waiting to see what he would do. He charged at her, his blade taking a low swing at her ankles. She jumped above the swing, surprising herself. Having avoided his strike, she took one of her own, aiming at his shoulder. He blocked it easily, casually turning it aside. He came at her with renewed speed, his blade moving so fast she could barely see it. Reacting purely on what the Force told her, she was able to block his strikes. She got a bit distracted, however, and one of his strikes slid through her saber defense. A strike aimed at her neck. It never made contact, though. It stopped about 2 inches from her neck. She could feel him straining to move it closer, but he could not. It was then that her attacker dropped his hood and lowered his saber, leaving her staring into the astonished face of her mentor. He seemed confused as to why his saber had not moved an inch. Then understanding dawned. "You can drop your shield now, Padawan." Callista stared. "What?" He smiled. "You have a very rare talent, my Padawan. Very few Jedi can project force shields, and you are one of them. I noticed it a few weeks ago, but this is the only way that I could think of to test it accurately." Callista flinched, remembering how close he had come. He smiled. "I also noticed that you have good acrobatic skills. I want to start teaching you Form 4. Hi, Harpax. Yes, I'm occasionally looking at chat. All right. 3 days had passed since the events in the alley, and Callista was still coming to grips with what had occurred. She thought back on the events of the past few months and realized that her skill had manifested itself on more than one occasion. Several times during training, her master had come close to her with the saber, but every time he stopped. He didn't baby her, but did his best to make the training sessions as real as possible. The last few times they had trained, it had been with their sabers on full power. She needed to know what to expect in combat situations. The only thing that had stopped his saber from making contact was his control and her shield. Standing in the training room, Callista sank into a light meditation. She wanted to work on focusing her shield technique using some documentation that her master had provided. She hefted the training remote in her left hand. It was calibrated to deliver stinging bolts. They were typically used for laser deflection training, but she felt it would serve her purpose adequately. Activating the remote, she stepped back as it hovered before her. Holding her saber steady in a low Form 4 guard, she thumbed it to life. It hummed loudly in the empty room, echoing back at her from the dimness. A little deflection training would make things all that more interesting. The remote shot away from her into the dim corner of the room. Setting herself in a defensive stance, she reached out with her senses until she could feel the ripples and eddies that the remote created within the force. A bright red beam lanced out of the darkness, and Callista brought her saber around to intercept. She was just a hair too slow. The bolt hit her in the shoulder, making her wince. Pushing the pain away, she settled herself again, tightening her focus on the remote itself. Her world consisted solely of the remote. That was her first mistake. She knew better than to do that, and here she just had. She was not paying attention to anything else in her surroundings, and she knew that such inattention in a battle could prove fatal. Her danger sense flared as another bolt flew out of the darkness. This one was aimed low towards her feet. Reversing her grip, she flipped the saber to point the tip towards the floor. The energy bolt hit about an inch above the end of the blade, causing the blade to flare slightly. Rotating the saber so the hilt rode the inside of her forearm, she dropped into a crouch. She could feel the remote on the other side of the room moving slowly in the shadows as it prepared to strike. The buildup of power was slight, but she felt the shift. Extending her arm behind her, she caught the blast on the tip of her blade, flicking it away from her. It went wild, careening around the room, and she felt another presence just as a bright green blade intercepted the errant laser, and a voice called, "Remote, pause!" Glancing up in surprise, she looked straight into her master's bright blue eyes. They were dancing with laughter as he looked at her. "You seem to be in a predicament, Padawan. Would you care for assistance?" Giggling as she realized how ridiculous her stance looked, she quickly stood up. "I noticed that you have been studying Form 4. May I ask why you were training with a remote so soon?" Callista blushed. "I thought it would be a good way to further test my shielding skills." Nodding slowly, he looked at her. "You pulled your focus too tight. That's dangerous." Blushing again, she looked down. "I know." He gently tilted her face up so she was looking at him. His gaze softened. "Padawan, I was not chastising you. I was just helping you to see it for next time. Shall we go at it again, this time together?" She nodded, stepping up beside him as he reactivated the remote. Sorry. Okay. Rising early the next morning, Callista meditated to prepare herself for the day. Life with Master Faulkner was never dull, that was for sure. She hooked her lightsaber to her belt as she made her way out to breakfast. Her master looked up from the breakfast preparations to greet her. "Good morning, Padawan. I trust you slept well?" Nodding, Callista made her way to the counter. "I did." He smiled. "I wanted to let you know that we will have a guest today." She glanced up at that statement, and he continued. "Master Stefan Card will be here on business, and I invited him to participate in your training today." "I would be honored, Master." She finished her breakfast quickly and went to prepare for the day. As she entered the room, she heard the door chime, and her master went to answer it. "Ah, Master Card, it was kind of you to accept my invitation at this early hour. Please come in." "It was my pleasure." Stefan said with a smile as he bowed to his fellow. I'm glad to see things have been well with you, my friend. He looked at the young lady. And I take it that this is your new student? Her master smiled. Master Card, may I introduce my Padawan, Callista Gesserin? Callista bowed in respect. Fair morning, Master Card. And to you, Stefan said as he looked at her closely. I sense a lot of spirit in you, young lady. You are starting to remind me of my daughter already. Well, he said as he looked over at her master, where would you like to begin? Her master chuckled. Not even in the door 5 minutes and already down to business, Stefan. I think right now would be fine if Callista is ready. She nodded. Well then, let's adjourn to the training room then. Stefan nodded as he followed them to the training room and looked over the settings. Smiling in approval, he removed his robe and laid it aside, then motioned to Callista. If I may, Callista? She offered her lightsaber hilt to him, and Stefan carefully looked it over. For her first time, the craftsmanship is impressive, Stefan said with a nod as he handed it back to her. Nicely done. Callista blushed. Thank you, Master Card. I have been considering constructing a second to match. She could feel her master's surprise at that statement. She turned to look at him. My apologies, Master. I had intended to tell you, but it seemed appropriate. Maybe a little ambitious, Master Card said as he regarded her. It's crucial to master the one before moving on. Well, shall we? He drew his hilt, igniting a silver-blue blade, and saluted the girl. Callista did likewise, drawing her saber and igniting its brilliant purple blade. Saluting him, she stepped back several paces. Stefan came forward and feinted to the left before coming around to his true target, but he kept himself on a level that Callista would be more than capable of defending against. He wasn't disappointed with her block and sudden parrying of his blade before she attempted to counter with her own move, which he quickly blocked. He kept the moves the same for a few minutes to understand her actions. Slightly surprised at the speed of his attack, she backed up a step. They traded blows back and forth quickly, getting a feel for each other's style before he called a break. Very nice form indeed, he said. During a break, the fourth form suits you, I believe. How long has she been studying the form? Stefan asked her teacher as he relaxed for a few moments. A week, her master replied. Stefan was surprised by that bit of information. I'd say you have a fast learner on your hands, he said with a grin. Though I'm not a master of this form, I would say it would suit her greatly, much as with my daughter. Well, I'm convinced of her skills, unless you want her to have another go at it, my friend. She smiled. Thank you, Master Card. I would love to. Master Faulkner sat in his room reviewing the events of the day. His Padawan was a fast learner indeed. Typically, a student would take a month to learn as much as she had learned in a week of studying Form 4. She had a strong dedication to her studies, and it showed. The previous evening he had silently watched her practice and was amazed at her focus and knowledge of the form in so short a time. He knew that with time and training she would become more confident. Alright, that's the end of Chapter 1. If you have any questions or would like to ask about story facts, please let me know. Let's see. Would you guys like another chapter? I think we have time for one more. Well, I'm no voice actor, but I do appreciate that, Harpax. Thank you. believe that we do have time for one more chapter if you like. Should I make that a command? Oh, there it is. There's my bot. All right. Yes, all the cozy vibes. Okay. Just a note on this particular chapter, a year has passed. This whole story is only about 10 chapters long, so I do a bit of time skipping. Yes, pretty much. Callista is now 15, just for reference. So. Oh, sorry. Trying to keep from going into a coughing fit. I apologize. Okay. Chapter 2. Callista once more found herself in the training room late into the night. Her drive to learn more of her chosen form was unquenchable. She knelt on the training mats, her mind still and clear as she prepared to practice. Her lightsaber rested across her palms. She knew the weapon intimately, every piece, and how it all fit together. Her mind focused, she brought herself out of the meditation, slowly rising to her feet. The mat was cool against her bare feet. Holding the deactivated hilt in her left hand, she slowly moved through a few more of the advanced forms, getting a feel for them. Learning the forms first without an active blade was better, so they were familiar. She fought she spent the next several. She fought against an imaginary opponent, her movements quick and precise. She could see him in her mind's eye. His blade came down diagonally from a high guard position, aiming at her left wrist. Bringing her saber up from the low guard, she rotated her wrist so that her blade intercepted his at eye level. Their blades locked, sparking and hissing against each other. He shoved against her blade, trying to make her stumble, and she shoved right back, hard enough to force him off balance. He went stumbling away as she set herself again. He charged, aiming for her stomach, but she spun away and blocked it, forcing his blade towards the ground. He could feel her intense concentration through their link and was surprised. She was very dedicated to her training, spending long hours practicing, usually far into the night. She always woke refreshed and full of energy, having slipped into a light healing trance. He was surprised she had such control of her self-healing abilities at such a young age. All Jedi were trained in basic healing techniques, but some had the gift of healing. His Padawan was apparently one of them. He knew that he did not have the knowledge of healing to teach her, but the healers of the temple did. He felt it was time that she moved on to the next phase of her training. As Callista was preparing breakfast the following morning, he brought up the subject. Callista, I think it's time you move forward in your training. She paused in her preparations to look at him in surprise while he continued. You have an innate skill as a healer, but that is something that I cannot help you develop. There are Jedi at the temple who could provide the required training. Glancing down at what she was doing to steady her whirling thoughts, she felt sadness. Her master had been a fixture in her life for as long as she could remember. Was he getting rid of her because he was tired of having her around? He could sense the direction of her thoughts, the thought that her thoughts were taking, and came around the corner to place a hand on her shoulder. Callista, know this. I will never leave you. When you need me, I will be there. She nodded, glancing up at him as she set her paring knife aside. I will miss you. But if that is the will of the Force, then I will go. Callista sat up much of that evening, thinking over the years she had trained with Master Faulkner. He had taught her much of the ways of the Jedi, taking her in when no one wanted her. He was patient and kind, gently correcting her when she made a mistake. She slipped out of her room and went to the training room and then the workshop. The workshop contained the necessary tools and parts for building and repairing lightsabers. True to her word to Master Card all those months ago, she wanted to construct a second saber to match the first. She found the parts she needed to be hidden away in a box. Her master had expected her to build a second saber all along. He knew her skills were up to the task. Along with the parts, she found a note in her master's handwriting. Dear Callista, at some point I knew you'd want to build a second saber, so here are the parts. I am so proud of you, my Padawan. You have excelled in everything that I have taught you. Your patience and concentration during the saber lessons are to your credit. I hope the second saber will serve you well and that you will use it with care. I have included the instructions on appropriate meditations to utilize in constructing a lightsaber when needed immediately, as I know that yours is. Be well, my Padawan, and may the Force protect you wherever you may go. Callista's vision blurred with unshed tears as she read. He had known that she would keep her word, and he had gone to the trouble of finding these parts and crystals that matched her existing saber. She understood that that was no easy task. Hauling the box out of the workshop, she set it on one of the training mats and settled back on her heels. It would be a long night, and tomorrow she left for Coruscant. With the hilt laid next to her, she picked up the circuit board and began to connect the wires that ran to the ignition switch. Soldering them in place with a microtorch, she slotted it into place inside the hilt, connecting the wires. Next, she connected the power cell. Slotting the crystal into place beneath the focusing lens of the emitter, she screwed on the end cap and then sank into meditation. She alone could not build a perfectly functioning saber. For it to function correctly, the separate parts had to function as one unit. By bathing the saber in the Force, she was effecting an elemental shift in the components. This allowed them to function as a whole. She did not know how long she sat in meditation, but as she opened her eyes, she could feel her master standing beside her. She looked up and accepted the glass of water he offered. You did well, Padawan. Sipping slowly, Callista emptied the glass and rose shakily to her feet, the new lightsaber in her right hand. With her master's steadying hand on her elbow, she slowly made her way up the stairs and to her room. She sat down heavily on her bed, fumbling to remove her boots. Her master gently pushed her hands away. Rest, Padawan. I will take care of it. Coruscant can wait a few days. She nodded wearily, leaning back against her pillows as he removed her boots. She could hear the boots thump to the floor as he took her left foot in his hand and gently began massaging it. The muscles were tense from hours spent in the meditation posture. He sent waves of reassurance through their link, urging her to rest. She could still feel his presence near her as she slipped into a light healing trance. She knew it had been a good couple of days, and her body needed to rest and heal. Turning over, she opened her eyes. He was standing right next to her bed. She started slightly and then sat up slowly, shaking off the momentary disorientation often associated with coming out of a healing trance. He sat on the edge of her bed and handed her a glass of water. If you're feeling up to it, we should go to the temple today. She nodded. I'm ready. He smiled again and bent over, before picking up a package from where it rested on the floor. Accepting her empty glass, he handed her the package. I contacted the temple as soon as your healing skills began to surface. I wanted to give you something to take when you go. Carefully unwrapping the paper, she uncovered a set of dark blue and tan robes that were usually worn by a healer. She gasped and threw her arms around his neck. "Thank you." He chuckled. "You're welcome. When we reach Coruscant, you will have the proper attire." Slipping the strap of her bag over her right shoulder, Callista rose from her seat on the transport and followed her master to the landing pad. He turned to her as they made their way to the temple. "Stay close, Padawan. We must meet with the master healer." They made their way to the medical wing of the temple. Callista was amazed. She had never seen so many Jedi in healer colors before, let alone that many Jedi at all. Pausing by a door marked Master Healer Mana Azad, her master knocked on the frame of the open doorway. The woman seated at the single desk glanced up and smiled. "Welcome, Master Faulkner." "Padawan Jassarin, please have a seat." She turned away from her computer, focusing on the two Jedi before her. Master Faulkner spoke first. "Healer Azad, this is my apprentice, Callista Jassarin." Callista inclined her head. "As mentioned in my message, Callista has extraordinary healing skills. Is it possible for her to train under one of the healers here at the temple?" Mana nodded. "Currently, all healer apprentices are trained in a classroom setting, but some are chosen as apprentices to the knights. I have been watching Callista's progress, and I believe that she would be a wonderful addition to our staff." Callista smiled and blushed slightly. Mana continued, looking directly at Callista. "Padawan Jassarin, given where your particular skills lie, I would be honored to train you in the ways of the Jedi healer." Stunned, it took Callista a moment to find her voice. She cleared her throat nervously. "Master Azad, it would be an honor to learn the healing arts from you." She rose and bowed, the other woman doing the same. "You may have the next 2 hours to set your affairs in order. When the time is up, please report to me here." Callista nodded as Master Azad handed her a sheet of flimsy with directions back to her office. Accepting this, Callista and Master Faulkner bowed and left her office. "Master, do we have time for a sparring match?" He thought a moment. "We do. The practice rooms are this way." He pointed to the left. Entering, Callista noticed that it was set up much like the training room in her master's home on Corellia. They paused to remove their cloaks, and Callista set her bag off to the side. Having shed her robe, she approached the mat, saluting her master with her single saber. She sank into the force, preparing for the spar. Flicking the selector for her saber, she set it to the lower training setting. The saber hung loose in her left hand, at the ready. Circling each other on the mat, they waited. Her master moved first. His bright green blade came slashing upward from a low guard that Callista blocked easily. The tip of his blade knocked into the mat, causing it to smoke a little. While his blade was still low, she spun and struck for his midsection. The blade grazed his stomach, and he grunted. "Well done." She smiled and set herself again, flipping her hands over so that her right arm was level with her chin and her blade pointed at the floor. She slid her left foot forward to balance herself. His blade was a blur as it came in from the left, but her move was wise, for his saber bounced off hers and went wide. She flipped over his blade, blocking an upward strike as she went. She then landed in a crouch behind him, her blade held low. Sensing him turning, she rolled away from his strike. She came up on one knee, and they locked blades once more. He deactivated his blade and backed up a step, signaling an end to the match. They bowed to one another and went to gather their things. They slowly made their way back to the landing pad. She was reluctant to see him go, as he had been a part of her life for many years. He paused as they reached the landing pad. "Callista, Master Azad is wise in the ways of the healer. There is much to be learned from her." He turned to go, but Callista stopped him and hugged him hard. She could not stop the tears that came to her eyes. "I will miss you, my master. I thank you for everything that you have taught me, and I will honor it." She released the hug and bowed, and then turned before heading back into the medical wing and her new studies. Yes, so 2 chapters. Yay! I survived. Do you guys want one more? Because I can read a third one if you want. Yay! Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Damon. My back was getting stiff. I'm not gonna lie, I was actually doing some kind of on the fly editing like an hour or two before stream just to kind of clean up some of the grammar. Cypher! Hi! Alright. I'm gonna have a little bit of my Girl Scout cookie. Alright. I will try and label the VODs for what chapters we covered, so if people want to either listen to the VODs or they can go read it, it is linked down in my info box on my page. You guys ready for chapter 3? Okay. Yeah, I should probably do an eternity command or something because I do time skip a lot in this particular story, so. Alright. Having said that, 3 years have passed, so Callista is now 18. Just keep that in mind. Oh, sorry. Okay. Chapter 3. Her days over the years had been filled with many lessons, but Master Azad had spent a lot of time getting to know her new Padawan. She had become the mother Callista never had. She was a firm teacher, but she was also gentle. When Callista made a mistake while practicing a technique, her master always showed her that what she had done wrong, yet in a caring way. Part of her studies included working a rotation in the temple infirmary. This generally meant healing minor wounds sustained during lightsaber training. Now and then, there were more serious incidents. Callista sat in the common room of the quarters she now shared with Master Azad. Calming her mind, she sank into the Force. Her mind was filled with everything that she had learned today. Her advanced anatomy class had been studying the skeletal system in different ways to tell if a bone was broken. She reflected on the day's lecture, accompanied by sobering hollows of various cases. A broken bone may not be as obvious as a bone poking through the skin, Jedi Knight Inari commented. There are other ways to tell if a bone is broken, if the area is swollen or bruised badly, or if the person screams or cries when you touch the area. Those are sure signs that there is a broken or fractured bone. Callista could remember the derisive laughter of some of the other apprentices as they looked at the hollows, laughing at the misfortune of the injured. She remembered having been angry that they would laugh at such a situation. What would happen when they had to deal with such a situation? She stopped that line of thought before it went any farther. As she settled her thoughts again, she felt a wrongness in the room of 1,000 fountains. Grabbing her lightsaber and a medkit, she raced out of her quarters, not having enough time to calm even her master. She sprinted down the hall, her lightsaber smacking her thigh as she ran. Skidding around the corner and entering the room, she sprinted as she caught sight of one of the younglings as he fell out of one of the many trees. How they loved to climb, even though they knew the risk. Lifting her hand, she tried to catch the child and cushion them with the force, but she was still not close enough. She watched in horror as the small body fell and lay still. Reaching the child, Callista fell to her knees, immediately checking for a pulse. It was there, weak and thready. The child did not have long. Scanning the child through the force, she saw that the child's lungs had collapsed. She could do nothing except to ease the child's pain. Carefully lifting her, she pulled the child into her lap. Her eyelids fluttered. "Healer Jacerin," she whispered. "I knew it was you." Her feeble voice trailed off, ending in a racking cough as the child struggled to breathe. "Save your strength," Callista advised. "You'll be all right." Inside, her mind was screaming. She was not fine. How can I lie to her? She shook her head, banishing the thought, and looking down just as the child took one last shuddering breath and lay still. Gently lifting the still form, Callista turned and ran out of the room and back towards the medical wing. She knew that there was nothing to be done. She didn't even notice how the hall cleared as she ran. The on-duty healer pronounced the child dead on arrival. Callista wandered the halls outside the medical wing, lost in thought. She was sure she could have saved the child if she had arrived sooner. She was so lost in thought that she did not see the Jedi Master and his Padawan coming around the corner. She ran smack into the younger man, falling in an undignified heap on the floor. The Padawan helped her up as his master looked at her with concern. "Are you all right, healer?" Callista mutely shook her head as she leaned against the younger man. He could see how distraught she was, so he directed his Padawan to one of the empty meditation rooms. "Turlan, in here." He entered after his student, closing the door behind them. Turlan guided the young woman to a seat, keeping a steadying hand on her elbow. The Jedi Master, whose name Callista later found out to be Einar Alderaan, sat across from her. "Would you like to talk about it?" he asked softly. At first, she shook her head, but sensing his concern, she eventually nodded. Sniffling, she wiped at her eyes, trying to brush away the tears. Turlan offered her a handkerchief, which she accepted with a smile. Haltingly, she described the day's events, focusing primarily on what had happened only a few hours ago. She still cried as she described how the youngling had died in her arms. Master Alderaan nodded quietly. "You've never experienced death before, have you, Padawan?" He left the question open, obviously wanting to know her name. "Callista Jacerin, Master, and no, I have not." Stefan walked through the halls of the corridors from the sparring levels, looking for Callista. Master Faulkner had suggested to Stefan that he continue her teachings in the ways of the lightsaber. "You cannot place the blame solely on yourself, Callista." He stopped where he was and listened to the conversation that was happening. After he heard for a while, he understood the anguish that was coming from her. "The young one that passed today. They told me about it when I arrived earlier. I'll let Einar counsel her on this matter. We can reschedule the lesson," he thought. "Master Card? Oh, well then," Stefan thought as he heard Einar's voice and opened the door to the meditation room. They were gathered in a small circle, and Stefan noticed that Callista had been crying for quite some time. Callista started when she saw Master Card enter the room. She had forgotten entirely about her lesson that afternoon. Looking between Master Card and Master Alderaan, she thought a minute. "Master Alderaan, may I be excused? I was scheduled for a lesson with Master Card." He paused. "Are you sure it's wise after what happened today?" She thought about that. "Yes, I think so. It will help me refocus." Stefan nodded, remembering how focused she had been during their sparring session all those years ago. She rose from her seat, quietly thanking Turlan. She bowed to Einar. "Thank you, Master, for your counsel. It is greatly appreciated. You have given me much to think on." She turned and left the room, following behind Stefan. Something new today we're going to try, Stefan told her as they entered one of the training rooms. Behind him, he could hear Callista tossing her cloak aside and the snap hiss of her two lightsabers coming to life. He turned around and noticed the second lightsaber that she had constructed. Confident enough to learn the two-saber form? He asked as he looked over her stance. I am, she said back to him. Stefan liked the tone, but had something else in mind for this round. Put them away, he told her as he turned and began to open a cabinet. We're not training with the lightsaber today? We are practicing swordplay, Stefan said as he removed two bokken from the cabinet and tossed them to her. She caught them and started to test them. I had these made back on Catan, he said as he pulled two more out and pulled the hood of his robe over his head. The weight and balance are just like that of a lightsaber. Aren't we worried about injury? Callista asked as Stefan walked around behind her. Only very, very minor, Stefan said as he pulled out a blindfold and pulled it over her eyes, and only if you strike with exceptional force. We will be safe. And the blindfold? Your lesson, Stefan said as he lowered the lights in the room. Your opponent might employ a number of things that would distract you. Your eyes can deceive you in the middle of a fight if they do that. You must learn to be open to the force, and not just like you have been, but by concentrating on your other senses. Okay, she said as she relaxed and resumed her fighting stance. Stefan nodded once and assumed a fighting stance of his own. When you're ready, he said. She moved as soon as Stefan finished saying the word, but he easily blocked her with one of his weapons. Before he could counter with the other, though, she flipped out of his range but rebounded for another strike as soon as her feet touched the floor. Interesting, Stefan thought, as they kept blocking and countering each other through the exercise. I've given her openings, but she's not taking them. Not keeping me from taking obvious ones, either. Callista stumbled slightly as yet another of Stefan's strikes got past her defense. What is wrong with me? She thought. Her concentration was usually much better than this. She stopped cold in the middle of the starring match, trying to calm her mind. That was a mistake. She only partially succeeded. She sensed Stefan behind her, in a moment of clarity, preparing to strike. Whirling around to confront him, their weapons locked as each fought for the center. She disengaged, taking a sweep at his ankles. Overextending her reach, she stumbled and landed hard on her knees. In the split second it took her to assess her location, he took the advantage. Hearing a rustle as he moved towards her, she reached out with her weapon in a blind attempt. She found only air. Her confusion was soon replaced with surprise as she felt the cool wood of Stefan's weapon against her throat and his voice next to her ear. If this had been real, you would be dead. You need to remain focused and aware at all times. She nodded as she felt him move away from her. Standing, she removed the blindfold. Her face burned with embarrassment at letting her focus slip so much. She bowed to him and put her weapons away before she departed. What do you think? Einar said as Stefan entered the room. She has skill, Stefan said as he noticed Einar looking over the review of the sparring match. But I think her true skills will actually be with her studies as a healer. I believe that you are right. Einar thought on that as he nodded softly at some of her moves during the bout. And what do you suggest? She's learning a great deal from Mana, Stefan told him, but I think that her skill could be stronger still in that area. Perhaps she could get introduced to Ari if you can arrange it. Who knows? Ari may like sharing some of her knowledge with a student again. Einar shook his head and placed the pad on the table. You know how she's been acting, trying to remove the Jedi from her life. Stefan nodded and picked up the data pad Einar had been reading. I know that, but out of us all, you're still her closest friend. That may be so, but she somewhat distanced herself from the Force. I can't even sense her like I used to without trying. Stefan circled the table and handed Einar the pad again. Look at her grades from the medical sessions. The temple hasn't seen this kind of healing potential in years. With the correct training, she can be just as good as Ari. Einar took the pad from him again and read over it. She's good, I'll give you that. But do you think we can wake the Phoenix and Ari? You think she'll like the idea of training again? Oh, if I know you right, Old friend, you'll convince her like you usually sweet-talk the Senate, Stefan said, grinning and patting him on the back. Now, let's get upstairs. I heard they were serving nurse stew. Einar smiled. He had asked the staff to put that back on the menu years ago when he was still a Padawan. I second that. Okay. I was just figuring out where I was. Give me a second. Still concerned over the spar? Stefan asked as he sat down with Callista in the room of 1,000 fountains. I am, she admitted, as her cheeks started burning again. I am ashamed of my performance. I couldn't focus as I thought I would. I believed that I would be able to put aside my feelings about the death of that young girl, but I was wrong. Stefan pondered this momentarily and pulled a blindfold out of his tunic. We will attempt something. Here? She asked in surprise as she stood up with him. Yes, Stefan told her as he tied the blindfold over her eyes. When he finished, he stepped out in front of Callista and pulled a small piece of wood from his vest. A simple exercise this time. In my hand, I hold a piece of wood. You will find it hard to hear where I move with the sound of the fountains. But if you listen to my words and focus as I give you the instruction, you might achieve the goal of striking the wood. Keep your hands to your sides. Are you ready? Yes. Callista... wait, hold on. Callista nodded, and Stefan kept his eyes on her and probed her in the force to test how well she would focus as he instructed. Focus the mind, he began to tell her. Cleanse the soul. Channel the powers. Now, release that which is negative. Find and keep sight of your target. He could feel her intensity as she began to open herself up to the force. Keep repeating what I have said in your mind. Mind and body as one. The strength of your heart is also the heart of your power. If you follow it and believe in what you do to be right, you will not fail. Hi, Espresso. He kept his eyes on her as he felt everything tighten inside of her and waited for the right time before he felt her come to her peak of her focus. Strike, he said. At that moment, she moved faster than Stefan had seen her before in their training sessions together. Her hand had gone to her lightsaber the instant Stefan had given the command and activated it while she swung it towards her target. The blade snapped the wood just high enough for Stefan to feel the heat of the blade. Callista returned her lightsaber to her belt seconds after Stefan's command and removed the blindfold to see where her strike had landed. Excellent work, Padawan, Stefan said with a smile as he handed her the remains of the wood. What I have given you was the instruction my father began giving me when I was a boy in the hills outside my home. I found myself able to focus more clearly on my goal, and I hope you will be able to do the same. She stood there, gazing down at the pieces of wood in her hands. The release that she had felt in that moment was extraordinary. She had never experienced anything so powerful. She gazed up at him with a look of wonder. Is it always like that? Stefan nodded softly as he looked at the wonder on her face. That was only the beginning. Why did I not experience this before? Stefan considered that as he sat in front of one of the fountains. I was once told that to truly experience the flow of the Force, you could only release yourself to it. Complete surrender. You cannot force it through you. You learn this in meditation, but in combat it is not so easily attained. Callista looked at him askance. And why is that? In battle, there can be so much going on around you. If you try to focus too much, especially on one opponent, you will not sense another approaching, Stefan said as he looked at the fountain. What you have to learn is what the Jedi, Corran Horn, thought of as a sphere of responsibility. Pilots would call it situational awareness. Do you understand me so far? She nodded. I practice it sometimes in my healer training. Exactly, Stefan said with a smile, coming to his next part of the subject. That was part of the lesson I wanted to present in the sparring room. You see, I wanted to know if you could apply this in the spar. I realized that you hadn't considered that aspect of it because you were focused on me. What you didn't sense was that there was another swordsman in the room as we fought. Her eyes widened in surprise. What? If you could have attained the release and the expansion of your senses, I have no doubt that not only could you have stood better against me, but possibly two fighters, Stefan said as he looked at her. But I realized that Master Faulkner and I do not always teach at the same level. Your skills remind me of my daughter Andrea's, but I have trained her differently than you have been, and for that I do apologize. She blanched at the thought of what might have happened had that been a real fight. So why the second swordsman if he didn't enter the fight? He did, Stefan told her. He and I traded off at different times during the fight. We both fought on a level where you could have possibly defeated us. She looked down, lost in thought. Is it possible for a rematch, perhaps? It is, Stefan said with a smile. However, as skilled as you are, I truly believe your calling is the healing arts. Not all of us are warriors, Callista. But even healers must be able to fight. Aye, they must, Stefan told her. You have to be prepared. He smiled as he looked back at the fountain, but it is my true hope that the taste of battle is something you don't have to experience. I should go find Master Azad. She's probably worried sick about me. Is there anything you would suggest for helping me keep my focus? Always listen here and here, he said, pointing to her head and to her heart. That is where your soul and the Force commands, and that is all the Force asks of you. Follow them and do what you feel is right. She smiled briefly as she nodded. With your permission, Master Card, I will go to bed early. It's been a long day. Could we schedule the rematch for 2 days from now? Whenever you feel you are ready, Stefan said as he bowed. And if you will excuse me, I too must leave for a meeting of the High Council. She bowed in return. Fair evening, Master. She paused. Stefan started on his way and then turned to look at her. I'm sensing something else you have on your mind. Would it be advisable for me to practice the two-saber form? Usually, one would master combat with just one lightsaber, he told her. Only the more advanced swordsmen would choose to wield two lightsabers. Not many move to the point of control of the Force to wield the light staff. That is why you have probably never seen one in use. Usually? I'm quoting what I know of the Old Order, Stefan said as he turned and walked back to her. Records are sketchy at best of individuals who wielded two sabers. What is known is that not many felt the need to, though they possessed the skill to do so. I myself have wielded two in battle before, but I choose to use my own. He pulled it from his belt to show her the details. She took it carefully, admiring the craftsmanship. She saw an alien script inscribed around the hilt. Kotani script? She asked. The ancient language of my people, still spoken mostly for the histories, he said as he traced the words, saying them in his own tongue, and then translated for her. Forged in light to vanquish the dark. He sat down and let her continue to look at it. On the mantle in my home rests my father's sword, handed down my line since it was first forged. It has the same saying. It's beautiful. She handed the saber back to him and bowed once more. My apologies for keeping you from your meeting, Master. He nodded softly. My father believed that even though there is peace, a warrior should always be ready. An old Kotani proverb. To my friends, I wish nothing but absolute happiness. To my enemies, who wish for my blood, I will send you to whatever god you wish. He stood and clipped the weapon back to his belt and bowed. No apologies necessary. I always enjoy teaching history. And that is the end of chapter 3. Yes. I don't know if I have time to read a 4th chapter, but maybe. Oh, thank you guys. I will try to tag the VOD as soon as it goes up for what chapters are in it. It's okay, Espresso. That's what the VODs are for. I also have my AO3 profile linked in my info box. Geo, what? We double shouted him out. Except I typed it wrong. Do you guys would you guys like one more chapter? I think I've got time for that. Maybe. Sorry, Espresso, we're working on that. Alright, let me get the next chapter ready to go. I'm gonna have to take a really quick break and go get some more water though, because I'm almost out. So I'm gonna flip my screen to be right back. I will be right back, you guys. Okay. I am back with water, and I also made sure to grab my meds while I was up and about, so. Also, yes, I'll need a reminder to get my commands put up in an info box at the end of stream. Alright. Alright, let's get situated here. Okay. Who else likes Girl Scout cookies? I have multiple sources, so I managed to get some. Well, at least up here I do. Alright. Okay. I mean, Demon, you're not wrong. I'm gonna do a little shameless self promo for the Girl Scouts. Where's the front of this box? That's the front of this box. Yeah, the Toffee-tastic are the only ones that I can actually eat because they're the only ones that are gluten free, and they're actually really good. Yes. Also, if I start into a coughing fit, I do apologize. It has more to do with the fact that that's the one thing hanging around from having COVID. Alright. You guys ready for chapter 4? Okay. Are you guys able to hear the music at all, or is it quiet? Is it really quiet? Because I have it really low. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I might have to work on that. How about now? I might have to work on that. It was something I did last night, so I'm not sure if it's working correctly. Hmm. I'll have to look at that. Alrighty. Okay. Oh, thank you. I had to put a pretty big disclaimer at the beginning of the stream because this particular story I wrote when I was about 17 or 18, so to me it's kind of cringe. But then I'm my own worst critic, so if anybody wants to ask me a question about the current chapters that we've read, which are chapters 1 to 3, you can use the command story fact, which is all one word. It's got a cooldown on it though, so just keep that in mind. Yeah, that one. What do you want to know? I don't actually. I didn't give her a name. Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask since we're on the subject? Uh, you're gonna have to spell that one out, Demon. I don't understand the acronym. Oh, the big bad evil guy? You really want me to spoil that for you? The last time I accidentally gave Celia a spoiler, she was bad for like 2 days. Espresso, actually, yes. A lot of them are. Um, so I'm gonna kind of give a little bit more information about myself. All right. Um, so, so to answer poetic or Espresso's question, sorry, um, Espresso, your text is really dark on my screen. I use dark themes, so it's a little hard to read for your name. But to answer your question, yes. Back when I was in high school and actually in college to an extent, I was actually part of um, a Jedi Realist community online. And I still stay in contact with several people. So a lot of the names in the story, Mana Azad, Stefan Card, um, and a handful of other names are actually the kind of pen names, if you will, of various people in the Jedi Realist community. On my screen, it's like a really dark crimson. It's really hard to read on my screen. Maybe it's just my eyes going. I don't know. I am old. Oh, that's better. Thank you. I can actually read it now. Yay! Celia, you're not wrong. Espresso, does that answer your question? AZ, hi! Alright, so I'm going to repeat my answer to Espresso's question, which was, she asked if anybody in my stories is actually named for people in my life, and the answer is yes. The long version of that answer is that when I was in high school and college, I was involved with several people in the Jedi Realist community. If you guys aren't familiar with that, Google it. It's a thing. It's basically people that apply the concepts of being a Jedi to their daily life. So I was involved in that community for several years, and several of the names in my story are actually people from that time in my life. So. Do you guys want me to keep going? I'm only supposed to stream till 9, but I could read another chapter if you really, really, really want me to, because I don't have to work tomorrow, so. Okay. Everybody have their water and their snacks? Oh yeah, and there's my bot. Thank you. If you guys want more information about that little thing from the bot, there is a disclaimer in my about page about the fanfictions. That's to cover my rear end. I wrote these for fun. I'm not making any money off them, so yes. If you want more information, it's in the about section on my Twitch. All right. Okay. I need to add more commands, huh? I don't think I can add fancy like ones that'll pop off on the screen until I'm at least affiliate, so alright. Let me move my phone out of the way so I don't drop it on the floor. Story of my life, I swear. Okay. Alright. Okay. Sniper, you're gonna have to show me how to add people as VIP because I don't know how to do it. You'll have to tell me later. Alright. Oh, is it really that simple? Well, maybe at the end of stream I will do that. Okay. Alright. Well, before I go any farther, I'm gonna clean my glasses, because apparently even without touching them, fingerprints all over the place. I haven't really looked around on the back end of Twitch all that much, so I'm not actually sure. Oh, of course you are, Demon. Alright. Okay. Keep in mind that there's only 10 chapters total in this story, and this is chapter 4. So whenever we're done with this chapter, I will be taking a little bit more time at the end of stream to answer more questions, and then whenever we're done is whenever we're done. So, you know what? Hold on. Good grief. Of course, everybody wants my attention. Okay. I had to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Sorry. Momentary distraction. Alright. Yeah, I already put it I put it back on Do Not Disturb. I keep it that way at work, and I took it off when I got home, but now it's back on Do Not Disturb. So, alrighty. There we go. Chapter 4. Callista literally stumbled into the quarters she shared with Master Azad. Her master caught her elbow to steady her. Are you alright, Callista? Nodding, Callista made her way to the couch in the common area. I am, at least I think so. A lot has happened today. Her voice trailed off as she thought back on everything. Would you like to tell me about it? Rana asked as she perched on the arm of the couch. Callista sighed, feeling slightly overwhelmed. I had a youngling pass in my arms this morning. Her master nodded quietly, having felt the passing of the child. Callista continued, I was very distraught over the incident and lost in thought, so lost in thought that I ran into Master Algeron and his Padawan. Vanna raised an eyebrow at that. I literally ran into them, she finished. I spent some time talking with him and his Padawan. I think his name was Turlon. Vanna smiled. Turlon Din, the grandson of Ari Luxert. A shadow passed over her face as she said the name, and Callista noticed it. Who is she, Master? She is one of the most skilled healers of the Order, but we fear that she is trying to sever herself from anything to do with the Jedi. She thought a moment. I think that you should meet her. There is a lot that you can learn from her. I will see if I can arrange a meeting for a few days from now. Callista also related her experience during her lesson with Master Card. I have never felt that disconnected before. Her master looked thoughtful. You let your grief consume you, and it clouded your perception of things. That is very dangerous. She smiled, though. He was wise to show you what he did. It is important that you always remain aware of what is going on around you, no matter the situation. Thinking a moment, Callista said, I have asked for a rematch in 2 days' time. Is that workable? Mana nodded. I can arrange your lessons to allow for it. Now, I think it is time that you get some rest. You've had a very busy day. Callista smiled. It had been a very busy day indeed. She rose and bowed, making her way to her room. Then she collapsed on her bed and was asleep before her head even hit the pillow. Two days had passed since Callista's lesson with Master Card, and today was the rematch. She rose before the sun to prepare herself for the day. Utilizing the method that he had taught her, she reached into the Force, expanding her awareness. She felt that same release into the Force that she had 2 days prior, and she knew that she was ready. Making her way out of her quarters, she made her way to the training room to find Master Card already inside. She bowed. Good morning, Master Card. Good morning, Stefan said, returning her bow. Are you ready to begin? She nodded. I am. She shed her robe, laying her saber aside as she would not need it. Sorry, my eyes are burning. Stefan proceeded to withdraw 2 boken from the cabinets, tossing one to her. After she had caught it and twirled it around a few times to get a sense of the weapon, he pulled the blindfold from his tunic and began to cover her eyes. I'm going to pause for about 2 seconds. I'm sorry. Oh, goodness. This is what happens when I stare at a computer all day. Oh. Sorry. No, I'm okay. I spend all day looking at a computer and it catches up with me sometimes. Nothing bad, just. Looking to see if I have any eye drops, which I do not appear to have any. Maybe I should add an eye drop command. Actually, you know what? I will be right back. I'm gonna go get myself some eye drops. Okay? Be right back. Yeah, I need to put that in as a command. Give me 1 sec. I'll be right back. Okay. I have returned. My eyeballs are a little bit less angry at me. Yeah, I should keep I should keep eye drops on my desk. I don't usually. Don't you bring that flute in here. No, sir. You are not bringing that flute in here, sir. The one thing that I loathe from GeoStream. Don't encourage him, Celia. No. I don't even have bits or channel points yet, guys. You guys. Anyway. I'm okay, I promise. Thanks, Demon. You don't want to know how many times I've reread these stories over the years? A lot. Okay. Alrighty. Yes, all the cozy vibes. I'm just trying to figure out where I was. Okay. Everybody ready? Get yourselves cozy. All the cozy. I need a cozy command, but I have no emotes yet. Yes. Okay. There we go. I was finding where I was. Oh, good grief. Sorry. Stefan proceeded to withdraw two boken from the cabinet, tossing one to her. After she had caught it and twirled it around a few times to get a sense of the weapon, he pulled the blindfold from his tunic and began to cover her eyes with the blindfold. The same as before, he told her, as he made sure she could not see. Total surrender. She nodded, once again opening herself to the force, holding nothing back. Even though she could not see, the room was in sharp focus. Lights, Stefan called, prompting the lights in the room to shut down, engulfing them in the darkness. And now, Padawan, defend yourself. And he came in slow to press the first attack. She felt him move, her perception changing. In her mind's eye, she could see the ripples he made in the force. Her boken snapped out a blur as as his came in for a high strike. Stefan suppressed the urge to smile as she effectively blocked the first strike. He decided to go ahead and add another dimension to it by flipping over to land behind her, silently calling for the second to come into his place. The change in her reaction to different fighting styles would let Stefan judge her ability to adapt. Something shifted. Someone else was there. She turned sideways, presenting a smaller profile. Shifting her weight slightly, she struck out to deflect a strike from her left, and then, bringing her weapon around, she shoved the other's weapon wide. She then whirled out from between them, setting herself again. Impressive, Stefan thought, as he came around and traded places again, coming in with the high guard and swept his boken down to take her legs from beneath her. She jumped, sensing it coming. Flipping over, she struck down at him, her boken tapping his shoulder. She landed neatly behind him. The other moved around so that she was flanked on both sides. Stefan focused away from the tap she had just delivered, truly impressed. Okay, now we test her to the max. They both started coming in and down, one striking and the other ready to counter any move she would make. Her perception shifted once more. Here they come, she thought. She crouched, waiting. Now, the force told her. She jumped just as they both struck towards her. Her left foot snapped out, deflecting one while her boken took the other attacker at the knees. Stefan was surprised but pressed on as she came back to her feet. She swung again for his midsection, but he batted the boken aside, letting his motion finish coming around in what would have been a decapitating stroke, but she was wise enough to sense it coming and counter with a strike for his wrists. In the seconds before contact, Stefan went by reflex and backhanded his boken. When they connected, the twirling motion he had started caused her blade to follow his, and it flew out of her hands and across the room. She went rolling, sensing her boken across the room. She called it back to her hand, but felt someone grab it out of the air. She stood, facing her attackers once more. She reached out with her senses, feeling where each of them was. Stefan picked up her sense of the force shining brightly. An excellent rematch, he stated as he straightened up from his guard pose. She also relaxed from her defensive stance. I'd say you've taken several steps forward from 2 days ago, Stefan said as he put his boken away. How do you feel? She stood there a minute. Like I'm swimming within the current of the force, part of it. The sensation changes little at that point, he told her, and this is only a sparring match. It can feel different, deeper, in fact. She cocked her head to the side, looking a question at him as she pulled the blindfold from her eyes. It all depends on one's relationship to the force, Stefan said as he took her weapon and put it away. It's like an ocean, deep, warm, and refreshing. She nodded, thinking that over. She could still feel the other person in the room, but all she saw was someone standing in the shadows with the hood of their cloak drawn over their head. You've already met, Stefan said as the other Jedi lifted his head to reveal the face of Aner Alderaan. She gaped at him. She couldn't help but remember how they had met. Okay. Okay. I'm just seeing where we're at. She felt his presence before he stepped off the turbolift onto her wing of the Imperial Palace. His face lit up when he saw her. Master, Aner spoke, a warm smile upon his face. Her face remained unchanged as she looked up from the two pilots who were seated beside her for strategic lessons. It's General Din now, Ari corrected him. Forgive me, then, General. Congratulations on your promotion, Aner replied. What is it you want, Aner? Ari asked, her eyes leaving her former Padawan's face and trailing back to the military lesson she was in the middle of. I wish to speak with you, old friend, Aner returned, still keeping a warm smile in hopes that Ari would return the same. Ensign Larks, what is the very first rule of engagement? Ari asked one of the young men sitting in front of her, ignoring Aner's request. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer, Ensign Larks replied, unsure of his answer. Correct, Ari praised him, looking past her students at Aner directly. I am not your enemy, Master. Aner's smile disappeared and his face became solemn. Ari, noticing the looks she was getting from her students at Aner's comment about calling Ari a master. Gentlemen, please excuse us, Ari ordered. The young men stood, saluted, and turned sharply on their heels, walking out of the lecture hall, leaving Aner with Ari. Why are you here, Aner? You would only be here if someone important was dying or you needed something, so get on with it. What do you want? Ari asked quietly, trying not to show disrespect for her former student. but also trying to keep herself distant from the connection she still felt with him. I have a Padawan I want you to consider training, Einar began. Einar, you know I'm no longer with the Order, Ari began, but Einar cut her off. But your heart is still with it. I feel it, Einar burst out, showing that he truly felt that way about his former master. My heart died with my husband 19 months ago, Ari returned, taking a deep breath as the painful memory coursed through her mind of losing her husband. Mikron died, yes, but you did not. At least the Ari I know would at least consider talking with this Padawan. Ari, her scores are off the charts, higher than Mana's. Not far from beating your scores, actually, Einar continued. Ari's eyes shot up to Einar's face. How close? If she had the phoenix inside her, then she would be you, Master. She has the ability for greatness, but needs a master to instruct her, Einar continued. I renounced my title as Master Healer when I left the Order. She would need someone affiliated with the temple to train her, or I began to refuse the offer. The council has already agreed to let you train her, affiliation or no. This is what is best for the girl, not you, not me, not the council, but the girl. What is her name? Ari asked, a heavy sigh resounding from her lips. Callista Gesserin. She will be in your office later this afternoon, Einar said, his smile reappearing. All right. I'll conduct a session with her this afternoon, but if things don't work out, I don't want to hear that I didn't hold up my part of the bargain. Ari agreed begrudgingly. You won't regret it. She will make you proud, Einar shot back, grinning now as he began to leave the lecture hall. Oh, and Einar, my office has been moved, Ari began. From the squadron wing to the command wing. I know. Everyone was talking about your promotion. May the Force guide your decision as head of Galactic Defense. Einar threw over his shoulder as he left. Ari just shook her head in regards to Einar's comment, a small smile forming on her lips as she watched him go. Ooh, okay. Einar let his smile drop as the lift doors closed. He hadn't told Stefan he didn't want to come here, but he had to talk to her, and it was good to see her at least. The lift dropped down, her presence in the Force diminishing by the second as he descended farther. Einar stepped out of the lift on the ground floor and walked off the large spherical balcony towards the group of public transports. He walked to the one labeled 8101 and entered, smiling at the already seated personnel on their way home from work. He walked slowly to the back and sat down by himself before looking out the window at the towering presences of the buildings of Coruscant, the planet that had been his home since he came here as a child. Mister! Einar looked to his right and saw a small Rhodian child sitting there tugging at his robes. Einar allowed a brief smile. Yes, child? The small Rhodian looked up at him with his big eyes. Are you a Jedi? He said with awe in his voice. I'm so sorry, Master Jedi, so sorry, a Rhodian female said, catching up with her son. Grillick, leave the man be. Einar just put up his hand. No, it's all right. And yes, I am, young Grillick, he said, fixing his gaze on the young Rhodian again and smiling. Wow, I've always wanted to be a Jedi. I even have my own lightsaber, though probably not as cool as yours. Mine's just a toy. The beam can't cut through anything, Grillick said, almost giggling. Einar laughed and patted him on the shoulder. Thankfully so. I believe your mother would be quite upset if you hurt yourself. A lightsaber is a powerful weapon, and not a toy. The lightsaber, Einar said, reaching for his and resting it in his palm, is a Jedi's life, or so an old saying goes. It means that it takes us a lifetime to learn to use one, and a lifetime using it. Our commitment is everlasting. His voice trailed off as he thought about Ari's decision to leave the Order. Grillick's jaw seemed to literally drop as Einar held his lightsaber before him. Can I? Einar's thoughts returned to the present, and he smiled. You can hold it, yes, but I'm afraid it won't activate without my bioelectric signature. That's okay, Grillick said, and his eyes seemed to almost fall out as Einar handed him the lightsaber. I built this lightsaber when I was, 15 or so. Thankfully, I've never lost it, he said, grinning. I just jinxed it now, didn't I? Grillick started laughing and handed the lightsaber back to Einar after examining it carefully. Thank you. Einar patted the kid on the head and smiled back. You're welcome. He stood up and bowed to the kid's mother as the transport ascended towards the temple's entrance. Madam, you have a nice son. It was nice meeting you both. May the force be with you. Einar attached the lightsaber back to his belt and moved around for the exit before jumping out into the cool breeze and walking up the stairs between the giant statues of all the legendary Jedi: Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, Corran Horn, Kyle Katarn, Jason Solo, Anakin Solo, Jaina Solo, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker. The latest addition, actually, after careful consideration, the statues went on and on. The legacy of the Jedi looked down on him, and he felt as if they were watching his every step. Lost in thought, he heard a familiar voice say as he reached the top and saw Stefan standing there, leaning against the statue of Kim Solusar. Should you really be doing that? Einar asked as he walked past him and nudged him a little. Stefan grinned as he caught up with him. So I take it the meeting went well? As well as could be expected, yes. She agreed on meeting Padawan Jacerin, Einar said as they entered the main lobby and were greeted by knights and Padawans hurrying about for classes. That's good news. How is she? She's been better, Einar said as he punched in the code for their floor and the lift door shut. She put on a brave face. You know that iron plate, but she can't fool me. Yeah, I calmed her a few days back, congratulating her on her promotion and just catching up. She wasn't very talkative, Stefan explained. We'll see what happens next. Alright, and that is chapter 4. Oh man, I need emotes in here. Can somebody get me a stretch command, please? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Actually, give me 1 second before you trigger that command. Let me fix something real quick before you trigger that command. Thanks. I'm gonna fix the timing on some of those. 1 moment. Okay. Yes. I'm just taking the timers down a little bit on some of those redeems. Because I made them really long initially. So I'm just taking them down a little bit. That one I'll leave. Okay. Alright. Oh, thank you. Alright, if anybody has any particular questions about what we read so far, you can use the story fact command. There is a, I think a 10 or 15 second cooldown on it. So... That has nothing to do with the story, Celia. Ask your mother that question. I did say that, yes. Uh-huh. Anybody have any questions on chapters 1 to 4? I know some people came in late. Feel free to use the story fact command if you like. Oh yeah, pretty sure there was. Anybody have any questions? Anybody at all? I know, like AZ and Stay and a couple people came in late. So if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to ask using the story fact command. Yes, I'm glad that everybody is here. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I think I got over my initial I suppose it helps that I teach kids, so that probably actually has a lot to do with it. I had to get over my fear of public speaking really fast with that. Alright. Okay, next stream at this point is slated to be next Wednesday. Same time slot, same place. I might stream... Oh wait, no, I can't stream this weekend. This is my busy weekend. Thank you, Gio. I was gonna say I can stream Sunday, but I probably won't get home until about 5:30 anyway. I mean, I could technically, but yeah, I have a lot going on with youth group stuff, so my day off is actually going to be preparations for all of that. Yeah. But I'm really glad that everybody was able to make it. Thank you a lot for everybody that came out. I will do my best to label the VOD for the chapters that we covered, and you can also go read them on AO3 if you would prefer that. So. Oh my goodness, Demon, make sure you take care of yourself. Yeah, that's a little excessive. Uh-huh, sure you haven't. That's not a mental word. Yes, what Espresso said. Don't run yourself into the ground, sir. It's not good for your health. I actually made myself sick that way. Just, you know. You get run down enough and you will actually make yourself really sick. So, make sure you drink your water. Make sure you get your rest as much as you can. Yeah. Oh, I know. I know. I'm ignoring my phone right now because one of my staff for my 8th group was messaging me, and I'll look at it later. Okay. Hey, just Sniper, can you trigger the meds command for me, please? Thank you. Doing so right now. Alright. So as of right now, next stream is next Wednesday. There's a possibility I may stream tomorrow if I get all of my things done, but it's not on the official schedule. Probably won't be streaming Sunday because it's going to be a ridiculous weekend, but maybe next Sunday I will because that's my free Sunday. So I will try to get schedule up somewhere. I'm not a huge fan of Twitch's schedule widget thing because it only allows you to pick one day. So I will figure something out. That sounds like a threat, Espresso. Just kidding. Oh, thanks, Gio. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all of you being here. I am 20 minutes over my time. Are you sure none of you have questions? We read 4 chapters tonight. I don't think he's going to be punching other humans. I can't help with that, sorry. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate everybody being here. I was actually trying to pay attention to chat but also read, so that's a little challenging. Yeah. And for anybody that is curious, no, I will not be doing any game streaming. My internet upload cannot handle it. We tested that recently. Not happening. Sorry. My poor internet out here is just like, nope. I mean, I can game, but streaming it to Twitch specifically does not work. Oh, Arcaden! Yay! Very funny, Espresso. Alright. I already got him. Just Sniper, most of these people are from the Stay Alive 7's community, by the way. Pretty cool people. It's where I hang out a lot. So. Alright. If there are no questions about what we read tonight, then I am going to call it for the evening. And I will see you guys on Wednesday next week. Well, actually, no, maybe tomorrow, but don't hold me to that. It depends on if I get done the things that I need to for this weekend. But that is my hope that I will actually get stuff done. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all. Have a lovely night. I'm not gonna raid out because I'm still learning how all of that works, but maybe next time. Yes. Have a lovely evening, everybody. Good night.